So, picture this. It's a sunny Saturday morning in my quiet little corner of Willow Creek, Virginia, the kind of morning where the birds are chirping, the coffee's brewing, and I'm just trying to enjoy a rare moment of peace on my porch then. Out of nowhere, a screech of tires rips through the air, followed by this sickening crunch, like the world just broke in half. My heart drops as I look over and see my trusty old bike, the one I've ridden to work every day for years, crumpled like a tin can under the bumper of a gleaming black SUV. Before I can even process it, this woman, let's call her Linda, bursts out of the driver's seat, arms flailing like she's directing traffic in a hurricane, her voice shrill enough to shatter glass, screaming that I'm the one who ruined her day because my bike was apparently parked in her way. Now, I'm just standing there, coffee mug still in hand, staring at the wreckage of my bike, the one thing that's been my freedom, my exercise, my escape from the grind, and Linda's acting like I've committed a crime against humanity. She's yelling about how my rusty piece of junk had no business being on the curb where it's been parked, legally, for years, and how I should have known better than to mess with her morning commute to the yoga studio. The neighbors start peeking out, some cracking smiles, others pulling out their phones, and I'm caught between wanting to laugh at the absurdity and wanting to scream because, well, my bike's toast. Linda's in full prosecutor mode now, pointing at the mangled frame like it's evidence in a murder trial, saying she's calling the cops and the HOA because I'm a menace to the neighborhood. I try to get a word in, but she jabs a finger at me, all don't you dare, like I'm some kid who TP'd her house. It's wild. Here I am, the victim, and she's spinning it like I planned this to ruin her life. The thing is, Linda wasn't just some random hothead. She'd been the queen bee of our HOA for years, ruling our little suburban kingdom with an iron fist, filing complaints about everything from kids' lemonade stands to mailboxes that weren't the approved shade of taupe. She thrived on control, and I'd seen her make neighbors cry over things like planting daisies instead of roses. But I'd always stayed under her radar, just a guy who kept his lawn mowed and his head down. Until now. This wasn't about my bike height, it was about her needing to win, to prove she was untouchable. And as I stood there, watching her storm back to her SUV, still yelling about how I'd regret crossing her, something in me shifted. I wasn't just mad about the bike anymore. I was done being stepped on. The cops showed up, lights flashing, and Linda put on an Oscar-worthy performance, clutching her chest, saying she nearly died, swerving to avoid my bike, which, let's be clear, was locked to a pole, not doing cartwheels in the street. The officer, this guy named Tom with a mustache that screamed, "I've seen it all," just raised an eyebrow and asked her how a parked bike could jump into her path. She stammered, pivoted to calling me a reckless neighbor, but I stayed calm, pointed out the skid marks, the angle of her SUV still kissing my bike's corpse, and mentioned that my neighbor, Mike, had it all on his porch cam. The crowd, now a full-on audience, gasped when Mike waved his phone, saying, "Got the whole thing right here." Linda's face went from red to purple, but she doubled down, screaming that Mike was out to get her, that the footage was fake. The cops took the video, and though they didn't arrest her, I could tell they weren't buying her story. She peeled out, leaving a cloud of entitlement and burnt rubber behind. That night, I couldn't sleep. My bike wasn't just a thing, it was my way of keeping life simple, of staying free in a world that loves to box you in. And Linda had crushed it, not because of some accident, but because she couldn't stand anyone existing outside her rules. By morning, my phone was blowing up with HOA emails, each one colder than the last, accusing me of obstructing pathways and threatening community harmony. Linda had gone straight to the board, painting me as some anarchist who parked his bike to sabotage her. Then came the flyer's glossy, dramatic things taped to every mailbox, with a blurry photo of my wrecked bike and a headline screaming, "Is our neighborhood safe?" I laughed, but it stung, because lies like that stick, and I could feel the whispers starting, neighbors wondering if maybe I was the problem. I knew I couldn't just sit there. Linda wanted a war, and I wasn't about to roll over. So, I got to work. First thing, I installed security cameras front, back, side, the works. If Linda was coming for me, I'd have every move on tape. And she didn't disappoint. 2 nights later, my cameras caught her sneaking across my lawn in a bathrobe, ripping open my trash bags like a raccoon with a vendetta. I watched the footage, half laughing, half furious, as she scattered coffee grounds and old mail, muttering to herself. I saved it, labeled it Linda's Midnight Trash Party, and kept building my case. Neighbors started talking, too quietly at first, then louder. There was Sarah, who Linda had screamed at for planting tulips too close to the sidewalk, and Jim, whose kid got a noise complaint for bouncing a basketball. Every story was another piece of the puzzle, showing Linda wasn't just after Mesh was a one-woman reign of terror. I decided to set a trap. I took what was left of my bike frame, propped it legally on the curb, and aimed a camera right at it. Sure enough, Linda couldn't resist. At 2 a.m., there she was, creeping out with a hammer, swinging like she was auditioning for a slasher flick, smashing the frame to bits, panting and cursing. I had her clear as day, face and all, but I didn't confront her yet. I wanted the whole neighborhood to see who she really was. So, I started showing up to HOA meetings, volunteering for small stuff, letting people see I wasn't the villain she made me out to be. Meanwhile, her flyers kept coming, each one more unhinged, accusing me of conspiring to ruin her reputation. But the tide was turning. Neighbors were done with her, and when Jim handed me a folder of her old complaint letters, pages of her ranting about everything from shutters to cats, I knew I had enough to bury her. The HOA called a special meeting, a tribunal, they said, and the community center was packed, people spilling into the aisles, phones out, ready for the showdown. Linda strutted in, all polished and smug, clutching a binder like it was her shield. She got up, voice dripping with fake concern, saying I'd orchestrated a witch hunt, that my bike was a danger to kids, that I was tearing the neighborhood apart. The room was quiet at first, some people nodding, but I could feel the skepticism growing. When it was my turn, I didn't yell or gloat. I just plugged in my USB and let the truth do the talking. First up, the trash bag video. The crowd gasped, then laughed as Linda's robe flapped in the night. Then the mailbox spray painting, her face caught mid-snarl. And finally, the hammer seen, every swing echoing, every curse clear as a bell. The room went dead silent, then exploded. Boos, shouts, people standing, calling her out. I read from Jim's folder her threats, her lies, her years of bullying, and the neighbors joined in, spilling their own stories, a dam breaking after years of silence. Linda screamed that it was all fake, that I'd hired hackers, but nobody bought it. The board, led by a guy named Paul, who looked like he'd aged a decade dealing with her announced fines, stripped her of HOA voting rights, and banned her from filing complaints without approval. The cheers were deafening, people hugging, laughing, free at last. Linda stormed out, slamming the door, promising lawsuits, but her voice was just noise now, drowned out by a neighborhood done with her reign. I thought that was the end, but Linda wasn't one to fade quietly. A week later, my cameras caught her sneaking onto my lawn at midnight with a bucket of paint, ready to splash my garage. But my new motion lights lit her up like a Broadway star, and neighbors poured out, phones recording, shouting her down. She dropped the bucket, stammered some nonsense about raccoons, and bolted. That footage was the final nail. The HOA hit her with more fines, and the story spread, local news, X-posts, the works. Linda became a meme, a cautionary tale of what happens when you think you're above everyone else. Standing in my yard one evening, new bike gleaming by the garage, I looked at the spot where this all started. I'd been angry, drained, but now I felt light, like I'd taken back something bigger than a bike me piece, my place in this community. Linda's house stayed dark, curtains drawn, her SUV barely moving. She'd lost what she loved most, control. And the neighborhood? It was alive again, kids playing, neighbors chatting, no longer scared of her shadow. But part of me wondered, was she really done, or was she plotting in that quiet house, waiting for another chance? Maybe I'd pushed her too far, or maybe she'd pushed herself. What do you think? Did she get what she deserved? Or is there more to this kind of fight than just winning? Drop a comment, tell me your stories, because I'm betting we've all met a Linda somewhere along the way.